Okay, if everyone could come back in, we're going to start with our keynote lunch speakers. So again, thank you everyone for attending. It's been really great so far, and we're going to add to that. So I want to welcome to the conference two good friends, clients, Dr. Karen Munkacy. Dr. Karen Munkacy. Karen has been a true pioneer in the legalization of marijuana in Massachusetts. She has an incredible resume. She's a anesthesiologist, a pain relief medicine fellow, CEO, founder of Garden Remedies, which is one of the top and one of the first operators in cultivation and retail in Massachusetts. She is a mother, a successful businesswoman, and truly remarkable is a cancer survivor. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to be able to call you my friend and client, and we've had some great runs together, and we're building an incredible company. It's tough to follow a resume like that, Dan, but we're going to try. Dan is a good friend as well. Dan is a very successful businessman with his own private equity firm called Fireman Capital Partners. Dan has deployed over $250 million in the last several years into over $1 billion of enterprise value companies, has carved out a real niche and focus in the microbrewery space, and it'll be interesting to hear about that and that application of that skill set to cannabis. He also is the founder of Winrose Advisors, which has over $1 billion under management. Dan, in his past, has run and built a number of significant hospitality portfolios and some of the premier golf courses in the world. And he has gone from cutting the grass to now growing the weed. So we welcome him into this industry. One of the things I talked about at the top of our conference was my 3 C's, was coming together, connecting, and collaborating. And this is an example of that. And why I have Karen and Dan together is because through the relationships on the stage, introductions were made. Karen came to me and said she's looking for new investors, new partners who can bring something more to the table than just dollars. Dan had expressed to me an interest in getting into the cannabis space. We got together, we talked, and a formal collaboration resulted out of that. Dan is a minority investor in Garden Remedies, but more important than that, he's an advisor. And they are creating a terrific partnership together. So, Karen, love to hear your journey into this space, as well as Dan. But tell us how it started.
Well, before I do that, I'd first like to say thank you for bringing Dan and I together. You're a master deal maker, and you made it happen.
I appreciate
and there were points at which, there's always concern that it won't happen, but you have an incredible ability to bring both sides of the table together and make a fair and very intelligent deal. And you did that for us, and we
Thank you.
very
And
much
I did not pay
appreciate
her
it.
to say that.
No. So if anyone's looking to make a deal in this industry, I think Frank is the top of the pile. So
Thank you.
You've done a great job.
But let's hear about you. I appreciate that.
So,
you can talk about me again later.
So I was a professor of anesthesiology and pain management, diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. I knew all of the anti-nausea medications, all the combinations, all the maximal doses, and nothing worked for me when I went through intensive chemotherapy. My friends are pretty conservative. None of them, as far as I knew, used marijuana. I never used it. And some of them said, well, when I had cancer treatment, so my doctor's friend said, I've had patients that have been helped by using this for nausea. I'd never used it. When I was going through chemo, it wasn't legal. I didn't know where to get it. After I was cured, I worked to get medical marijuana legalization on the ballot in Massachusetts. We started out with me and a graduate student. This billionaire saw our organization presenting in front of the Public Health Committee at the State House, funded us, built out the organization. It passed with 63% of the vote. somewhere during that time period, I visited businesses in other states. Now remember, this was in 2011 and 2012, and I was a bit horrified by what I saw overall. I'm a physician and a scientist, and it wasn't very scientific or professionally done at that time. So got together a group of people, some Wharton people, Anderson, Stern, et cetera, applied for a license, got a license, and have created quite what we believe is an excellent team. You have to have great people to have a great business. We have great people. We have a great culture in our business. And I started talking to Dan when we had 2 medical licenses, nothing else, and we were losing money. And he interviewed, and his staff interviewed our people, thoroughly looked at our business, our books, and said, I believe in you and your company. And now we have 3 medical licenses. We have 2 adult use licenses. We have 3 of the best locations in the state, and we're profitable. So it's not common in this industry to be profitable. So thank you for believing in us, and now we're doing very well. And a lot of it is thanks to Dan and his group. We were the 29th business they invested in. So when I'd call up Dan, I can call him up at any time, and he is always happy to give advice and guidance. And I'll say, well, I have this problem. And he'll say, well, the 3 times in the past when I was faced with this is what we did. And this has happened over and over again. And so he's really helped make our business what it is today. And I thank you for that. I think he's had a lot of experience doing that with a lot of businesses. He'll come in, he'll invest, he'll see where the areas of improvement need to be. And he has a very collaborative and collegial way of helping and guiding, and it's been absolutely fantastic for us. Things like we needed a new head of retail. He said, you should talk to the search firm. Brian Zaslow's a friend of mine. He'll find you a good person. We had a whole group of people that were great to choose from. We have a great new head of retail. Same for head of marketing. And so he's really added value and competence to our company. And the company's doing very well now. So thank you.
Dan, tell us about how you started to look at cannabis, because as I had said earlier, you made a big play in the microbrewery space and in other companies as well. And it's taken a lot for private equity firms to start to come over to this side. So tell us about how that journey started.
Yeah, so our firm focuses solely on consumer product businesses, lower middle market, so usually around $100 million in revenue or less. And we focus on businesses that are profitable, that show positive cash flow. We try to find industries within consumer that there's an emergence happening or some sort of preferential change within the consumer. So craft beer was like that over the last decade. Cannabis is certainly like that. And I think that because all of our investors are individuals versus institutions, a large portion of capital comes from my father and I, it's allowed us the flexibility to kind of take risks and kind of be just slightly ahead of the curve. So, we got into the juice business back in 2011, 12, sold to Starbucks, right at the sort of cusp of when the juice mania occurred. And we've done that several times, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes you can, not every investment, gets to the finish line. But with Karen and Cannabis, it was very much like that. We saw probably 3 or 4 years ago that the cannabis craze was going to change not just how people consume cannabis, but also it would start to intersect with what was happening in the food and beverage industry, which has been happening. A lot of changes there. As you know, you look at Beyond Meat and some of these other plant-based things, but it goes into just the whole nature of, it starts with millennials, but it's not just millennials. People want to have a healthier lifestyle. They want to be able to ingest things that have lower sugar, lower calories, lower carbs, what have you. And I think that they also care about the environment. So cannabis, in my opinion, is part of that whole movement of consumerism. And we just felt that as investors and people that, all of our deals are, for the most part, very engaged with the entrepreneur. So we just felt like we needed to be a part of that. Our first investment was with Privateer, which has now displaced into 4 different businesses, one of them being Tilray. And we made a significant investment through Privateer at a really important time of their career. It was about 6 months prior to them taking Tilray public. We actually joined their board, so it was just the 3 founders and 1 independent board member and ourselves. So it gave us a real opportunity to kind of understand from a larger level what was happening and how they were perceiving where the industry was going. And then after we'd done that investment, about a year after, we then started saying, how can we get more involved and engaged like we do with other businesses, where we truly partner with them, help them build the team, think about strategy and things like that. And so we looked at probably 70 or 100 different deals. And I had known Frank, through the community, through friends, through golf, and he told me how he had built up a practice in his business, and suggested I meet with Karen. And sure enough, we clicked right away. Karen, although she wasn't making money, I could see very clearly that as soon as she had gotten these licenses approved or received these recreational licenses, it wouldn't take that long for things to start cash flowing positively. So it was a little bit of a leap of faith, but clearly it worked. And like anything in investing, that's why there is risk associated with it. Nothing's like guaranteed. And the journey has been great. We've I was saying in the very beginning of it, this was really 6 months ago, so which seems like 6 years ago in terms of cannabis, right?
We live in dog years.
Yeah, but it's, we talked a lot about how, multiple state operators were getting the best valuations in terms of exiting, whether it be a year or several years from now, being in not just Massachusetts, but being in other states would enable us to, provide for a better value. And about a month or so into it, we both decided, with so much going on in Massachusetts in terms of the licensing, in terms of having to triple, in some cases quadruple our capacity of production, that it was probably better that we scale that back. So Karen was diving into Florida and New Jersey, and we both agreed it would be a good idea to just, and we talked a lot about my experience in the craft beer industry. So we bought into that industry at a high, and we wanted to build a platform, and we wanted to get good brands, so we're paying premiums for those. And if you look at what happened with craft beer, it's really changed very quickly. And even though beer is not going anywhere, other things have taken off, like hard seltzer, what have you. And I think you're seeing, quite a few that are really, going out of business or undercapitalized. I think the same thing happened here, and that was sort of the ghost story I told Karen about the boogeyman. When it comes, you don't know it's coming, and when it's there, it's too late. So thankfully, we both, pulled back, and we didn't spend all the money we're making, and as a result, now our business is really doing very well. It has a healthy balance sheet. It's very liquid. It's making cash every single week, and if you look at where the valuations have shifted, now the MSOs and things like that are certainly getting beat down a bit, and someone who's focused and has who would have known that Massachusetts would have been such a wonderful hotbed for this, but it's I think you just got to be very careful, right, with the industry, especially one that's as nascent as this, that things are going to shift underneath your feet without you even knowing it.
Well, and that was a big pivot for you guys.
Yes.
Grandiose ideas, which are aspirational, but to actually make that pivot that quickly is really a testament to how the partnership has worked.
We've had a lot of practice in this industry pivoting.
About pivoting? Yeah.
There's something new every day. So we, our first automation piece of equipment was a vape automator. Finally got it. Took a long time, trained the staff, working beautifully. Next day, Vape Pen Ban. That's the industry. It's just, and if you don't have resilience and if you can't pivot, it's really hard to do well in this industry.
Well, also what you're seeing is a lot of these companies that started had the business plan of being MSOs, and a lot of them didn't raise sufficient capital. And what we're starting to see is stress in those companies, and you're going to start to see, you are seeing a number of distressed companies because they did not pivot and they stayed their course, and it was the wrong course. So a big part of this industry, as you're saying, is you got to be able to move quickly to adjust to these kind of
every day
changes.
is a new day, and every day this business looks a little different, and sometimes it looks a lot different. And if you don't have the ability to make big decisions quickly, it could be very difficult to survive. So we're always looking at what's happening today, doing our best to predict what happens tomorrow. But when we have to pivot, we do it aggressively. You know, on one day, we were told Vape Pen Ban. Before we opened the next day, our call center was trained, all of our staff were trained, we had signs on the doors, because we wanted to pivot and have the people that came to see us, we didn't want it on the outside door, no vape pens, right? We wanted them to come in, check in, and we wanted to have all of our staff trained. Sorry, there is a vape pen ban temporarily, but in the meantime, we think that you would have the same effects with this, right? So what that did for us, though, it really put a lot of stress on our other product lines. We had a plan. We knew 20 to 30% of our sales were vape pens. We had this all planned out. We had our automation, and we're automating pretty much everything. Great plan, but now there's stress on the other things because people have to buy other products versus buying vape pens, right? So now we have to have more flour, we have to have more tinctures, more edibles, more everything than what we had originally planned to have. But you just, in this industry, you have to be nimble, and you have to be resilient, and you have to just live with a lot of change and uncertainty and be willing to deal with that and deal with it decisively. And having someone like Dan and his group who's seen the movie many times in many different types of industries, it's really helpful for us. I can pick, like I said, I can pick up the phone at any time and say, in the past when you've had to deal with this, how did you address that issue? And I've consistently gotten very good advice, and it's been very helpful.
So Karen, since you've been talking about the vape situation, do you see making up those sales, or do you see people, as we were talking with the commissioner, going back to the black market if this doesn't get resolved?
I think it's both. There are some people who are trying other products and are happy with products that don't work quite as the same way as a vape pen. The reason that vape pens are a great product is because the effect is immediate, and you can titrate the effect to exactly what you want it to be, right? You know within a minute or two when you take an inhalation whether it's the effect you want or whether you need more. And edibles don't work that way, tinctures don't work that way. Nothing other than smoking, a marijuana joint really works the way vape pens do. Some people are willing to use other products that don't work in quite the same manner, but there are some people who are going to the black market, and that is going to, there's a very good chance that people are going to get sick, and there may even be people that die, because that's where the bad products are. We have sold over 50,000 vape pens. We've never had anyone be sick or injured from our products. We only have cannabis in our vape pens, but in the illicit market, you don't have PhDs and scientists like we do. You don't have multi-million-dollar laboratories and outside testing of all the products. Sometimes it's 19-year-olds that are ordering this stuff from China or buying it on the street in California and driving it to Massachusetts. And there's a lot of very scary chemicals and substances in the illicit vape pens. And there's a very high likelihood that people are going to get sick and die if we don't get rid of this ban. We produce safe products. I understand why the governor did what he did. He wanted to prevent people from getting sick and dying. But unfortunately, what has happened is people not everyone, but a lot of people are buying these products from the illicit market, and that's where the danger is. And so we're hoping that this ban is lifted as soon as possible, because we don't want to see anyone else get sick or die. And there has been one death in Massachusetts since the vape pen ban, but it was someone who tested negative for marijuana in their system, so they never used any sort of marijuana product. They did test positive for nicotine, though, and that's where their illness and their demise came from.
Mm-hmm. So Dan, with respect to no longer going big, but focusing on your backyard, where do you and Karen see opportunities? Because you're limited to the rule of 3. You can own up to 10% in other facilities. Where do you see opportunities to grow this beyond just the platform that you have in the footprint?
I think that collaborating with other operators, clearly there's a number of applicants out there that are looking for a way to open up their retail store. They've been at it for several years. So to the extent that we can, whether it be providing product at wholesale, that's something that's on the table that we'll consider. To the extent that we can provide some capital on a limited basis, where it's strategic, we can certainly do that as well. But I think because you're limited in how much you can produce by the canopy size and obviously what we can sell through our own retail, it sort of puts us in a situation where we would look to, get together with others and collaborate.
Karen, how do you feel about the market with respect to cultivation, where that's headed in Massachusetts?
So currently there's a shortage. Everyone is looking to buy flower, and the wholesale price is very high. That will eventually go away. I think as more and more companies are licensed to cultivate, I don't think there's going to be the great access that there has been in other states, because the regulators here have looked at other states, and what they don't want is people desperately selling out the back door, because there's not enough legitimate people that are buying from them. But I do believe that the prices are going to go down for flower eventually. And when you look at the more mature markets, typically what happens is flower prices are the ones that are most compressed, and the processed products like the edibles, the vape pens, the topicals, the tinctures, there's less price compression in branded and processed products. So we're concentrating on increasing that production and putting all of those products on as many store shelves as possible. We have people calling us every day wanting our products. One of the things that we concentrated on at Garden Remedies is trying to create best-in-class products in all categories. Before we had the marketing, before we had the fancy containers. So in every area, we really wanted to create top-of-class products. Our vape pens, it's only cannabis in our vape pens, and we've uniformly received great reviews of them. Our edibles, I looked at other states, and a lot of them, it's amazing, they taste horrible, and the dosing is all over the place. So we've worked really hard to have accurate dosing, and our edibles are delicious. For instance, we went through 7 different chocolate companies before we found the gourmet Belgian chocolate company that we use now for our chocolates. Can't keep them on the shelves because they're really popular. So,
Do you see a trend in the product side? Everyone says flour's
Yes.
down, but is flour coming back? Or?
So typically, what's happened in other states is also happening here. When the market becomes legal, especially for adult use, which is really the majority of people, Massachusetts, we don't really have that much of a medical market, and I think part of it is because you have to register with the state that you're buying marijuana. A lot of people don't want to do that. Adult use, you go in, you pay cash, and it's anonymous. So what typically has happened is a lot of people stop using marijuana after college. They're in careers, they don't want to break the law, and so they like the way the products have made them feel. It's safer and less addicting than alcohol, but they stop using it. They'd like to use it, and so now we have these legal stores, and so they come to us. The only thing they've ever used is flour, right? They're smoked joints in their dorm room. So now they come to us, and we have over 50 SKUs. It's a bit overwhelming, and so maybe the first time they'll buy a few pre-rolled joints, right? Try an edible. Then the next time, maybe they'll come in and they'll try a vape pen. It's a slow process to get people to become more sophisticated consumers, because they're starting out with one thing, right? In the old days, they're probably buying marijuana flour out of a Ziploc bag. That's all they know. And they come to us, and they start slowly trying all these different products. And so what we've seen in other markets, and what we're seeing here too, is that over time, there's less demand for flour because people get more sophisticated, and vape pens are discreet, right? Smoke a joint, it's not discreet. Everyone in this whole room would know if one of us was smoking a joint, right? But a vape pen, you can just do this and use a product without anyone knowing. So over time, it goes from, in California, flour is about 35% of sales now. We're at about 50% of sales, 40% flour, 10% pre-rolls. But you see over time, more vape pen sales, more edible sales. Edible sales in some states are a very small percent of the market. My suspicion was that it was because they tasted horrible and the dosing was not accurate. So for us, edibles are about 13% of our sales, and that goes up over time. And I anticipate it'll probably get to 15%, maybe even 20% at some time. So you start out with the raw products that people are used to and they smoked 20 years ago, and over time they try these other products. They like how these other products work for them. They're more discreet, and then you see more purchasing of these other types of products.
So Dan, you bring an interesting, not interesting, but a great skill set with respect to branding. With Canarchy, your
Just
platform.
one of the reasons we wanted to join forces.
California started with an alcohol distribution kind of model for cannabis. We're vertically integrated on the medical side. Now you can go retail. How have you been looking at this industry from a branding standpoint? And also, especially where you're not thinking being an MSO just within the Commonwealth, does that change your thinking? Because the MSOs are like, we need the brand. You heard today about, Ianthus and the B brand, et cetera. Is it different now that if you're looking just to stay local?
It is. If you think about these brands in California, like Loud Pack, for example, or Lord Jones and other things, because of the state-by-state regulations and the fact that you can't distribute cannabis products from California to Massachusetts, it does make it more challenging to build brands across states. I think the solutions that they've had are challenged by the fact that, why would Karen have an incentive to take on another brand, where they may tell you what the ingredients are, tell you how to make it, all these things, when she's got a cultivation center and she's getting 60, 70% gross margin on what she makes. What's the incentive to have a licensing agreement? At the end of the day, it would have to be a significantly better product, right? And we all know that more or less, yeah, the products can differ in taste, they can differ in effect, but the ingredients are more or less the same, right? Especially when it comes to extract. There's no such thing as sativa or this when it comes to that, right? It's just extract, it's concentrate. Perhaps flower too, where they've got it so dialed in that whatever the strand is, you can pretty much replicate anywhere. So it's a commoditized business. The branding overlaid on that commodity is certainly going to be relevant over time. But I think because of the state-by-state barriers to entry, and the fact that the state like Massachusetts, where they're really promoting it from within and they're giving major incentives to be a local business, I think that it's going to be a challenging thing to see why Karen or others would want to pay an additional fee which would reduce their profitability when they can simply make it themselves or buy it within state.
And there have been companies that have approached us and said, well, this is a very well-known brand. Well, maybe it is a very well-known brand in Colorado, but no one has heard of this brand in Massachusetts, so why should I pay extra money when again, we can make it ourselves, and,
right.
and that name, there's no name brand recognition of these other companies from other states, for the
Right.
most part.
But does that change once the walls come down?
Sure.
The whole business will be different, and we
Right.
think about that and talk about that all the time. As was discussed earlier, cultivation will be even more commoditized. So that's something that we think about a lot, and we're not building up the maximum for cultivation because, first of all, we want to source it from other groups, and when this becomes federally legal, it's going to be the states that produce the highest quality at the lowest cost that are going to win that. And Massachusetts has one outdoor growing season, and the weather here is not great for growing outdoors. So places like the Emerald Triangle in California, probably Kentucky, they'll just have a lower cost of producing excellent quality flower. And so we're looking at the products that when the walls come down are still going to hold the prices, and you can build brands that will then be able to be sold anywhere in the country. And typically those prices hold, but the flower prices, I think it's just going to be like hops for beer, right? That will be, probably cultivation will not be a big industry in Massachusetts. There'll be other states that can produce a lot cheaper.
Where do you see, if any place in your business plan, CBD and hemp products fitting in?
So I drive my staff crazy because I'm always talking about having CBD. The problem with that is that a lot of the plants don't produce a lot of milligrams of the active ingredient, versus you have this much space, you produce a THC plant, this much space, you produce a CBD plant. Typically the milligrams of substance that you'll get, you get a lot more for THC. So we haven't really concentrated on CBD because it's more expensive to produce per milligram. We're looking at what MDAR is doing. We'd love, and I've actually tried to have the regulations changed so that we could buy hemp, process it, through the MDAR regulations and sell it through our dispensaries. That hasn't happened yet. That would be a great way to have an excellent and well-regulated CBD industry in Massachusetts, because you have licensed producers growing it, licensed processors, and it's very, all of our products are tested by an independent laboratory, so you know exactly what you're getting. A lot of CBD throughout the country right now, there was a study done that was published in Journal of American Medical Association, 10 different products, nothing was exactly what was on the label. Some had 10 times the amount of CBD, some had no CBD. And that's basically where we're at in the CBD market. There's really no trusted brand where you consistently can look at the label and know that's what's in the container. So
the brand Gronk. What better to trust, right?
I haven't seen his products, but at some point there will be brands that people recognize, they trust, and there won't be 50 of those brands. There'll be probably a few that are prominent. And so interestingly, even though there's a lot of garbage out there and a lot of things that contain completely different ingredients than what's on the label. So Consumer Reports did a survey of about 1,100 people that were using CBD, and over 90% were happy with the results. So you know that there's some efficacy and that this is working for what people are buying it for, even though it might not be the amount in the bottle that, that's on the label. This is not something that's going away. This is going to be a long-term trend. People say that this industry is fully developed. It's not. It's just at the beginning. And at some point, there will be brands that will dominate and will be trusted. There will be a Coca-Cola of CBD, a Pepsi of CBD. But there won't be the thousands of companies all successful in the future. So we're looking at that, and we are very interested in getting into that industry because our products are, you can trust that whatever it is that you buy from us, the label is accurate, right? And that's actually something that's not common in the CBD industry. So that's very interesting to us. CBD for pets, that's another thing that is interesting to us. Cornell Veterinary School did a study. It works for dog arthritis. Who knew, right? So it has a lot of benefits for humans, dogs, cats, horses, and it's an industry that's at its very beginning. So
we just have to get the FDA to come around to properly regulate.
It's so fascinating. You know, they approved a Philip Morris tobacco vape pen, which contains a huge amount of glycols, which everyone is saying you should not be inhaling. They approved that. Philip Morris, good job in getting that done through, through your lobbying. But yet the FDA has not approved Sativex, which works for multiple sclerosis, approved in Canada and the EU. So, they have not done a uniformly great job in the past. I don't know what they're going to do because GW Pharmaceuticals probably spent $500 million or $1 billion getting a Pedialex approved, which is approved for pediatric intractable seizures, works beautifully and saving children's lives. It's extracted from the marijuana plant, right? It's CBD. So CBD should be allowed in foods and in liquids. There's no lethal dose. It's not addicting, doesn't make you high. I don't know where they're going to go with that. I would hope that they make it legally regulated and available in food products and in liquids. And they could do a good job of making this a regulated industry so that you don't have all these products that are not accurately labeled and could have pesticides in them, could have heavy metals in them. This is, it's kind of a free-for-all right now. I bought some caramels recently. I just thought I was buying caramels. I bit into one. It tasted like marijuana. I look on the label in a small little area, CBD, right? So you can buy this stuff anywhere and everywhere, and it does need to be regulated to a certain extent. I just hope the FDA does not over-regulate it. We'll see.
So one area of great interest that I'm seeing amongst my venture capital clients in cannabis is CBD beverages. and alcoholic beverages, et cetera. So you have a partner who's an expert in the microbrewery space. Dan, what are your thoughts, in both of you, as to getting into beverages? Where do you see that going? Because we're seeing money really starting to go into trying to find the right technology that works.
Yeah, I think it's limited by the technology. So to get something that's soluble, that's the first thing. So it has to be a powder, a fine powder. Also, the onset and offset, being able to have a quicker activation, and so there's a sort of, like with edibles, you take an edible and it may take 30 minutes or so, and then it may take you an hour or two to kind of, like has an arc, right? Around 55 minutes, they tend to arc, and then it sort of fades away. So they're looking for something that is, sort of call it equivalent of a beer, or something that would give you that effect, like that sort of 2 to 3 milligram feeling, but also creating something that doesn't last as long to come onset and offset. And I know that I've looked at different companies that have looked at, they're doing it, but all I can tell you is it's still not really perfected. I know Tilray has partnered with Anheuser-Busch, and obviously Constellation, we know about Canopy Growth. I've seen a company out in Canada that I think Boston Beer is doing some pilots with, but it's still, I think, a ways away from getting to prime time. Now CBD water and all that stuff, we've looked at some of that stuff, and I honestly can't speak to it the same way, but that's been my experience. The technology hasn't been refined to scale on a large level.
Are you getting a lot of demand, people coming in asking for those kind of products?
No, it's interesting because this is a new industry, right? And people, for the most part, don't know these products exist till they come into the stores and they see them. So that's really how we found people get acquainted and educated about what's out there. So if something's not available, then obviously they're not going to become acquainted with it and familiar with it.
So Karen, what do you find is your biggest challenge in this industry? I mean, what's keeping you up at night?
I would say the biggest challenge I face is there's just so much opportunity, and you do need to focus on your core business. I think that's one of the problems that some of the MSOs have encountered. You just want to be everywhere, right? And you can't pay tens of millions of dollars for a license and then a year later not have any revenues from it, right? Because you're in a bunch of other states. So what we've done is we've concentrated on Massachusetts, and that is doing very well, and so we'll be able to expand our business beyond our core business. But there is so much opportunity, and it's the fastest growing business in the country. So the thing that keeps me up at night is what opportunities we turn down, because there is so much opportunity out there, and that is not going to be the case. And in 10 years from now, I think there'll be mature companies that'll be dominating different aspects of this industry. Now is the time to really get into the different areas and build a business. And we have done that in Massachusetts, and there's only a couple companies, I think, that have 5 licenses. We've really focused on here and increasing production, and it's working out very well for us. Would I like to be in 30 states? Of course, but you have to have the team, you have to have the capital, you have to have all the resources to do that well. And what I see with some of these other companies is they will run out of money probably, because it takes longer than you would hope. It's more expensive typically than you would predict. And it's not that easy to raise capital. And investors get tired, right? They get tired of writing check after check after check, and it costing a lot more than the original projections, and taking more time than the original projections. So what I see is that there will be some companies who are trying to capture as many opportunities as possible, that they're just going to run out of money, because it's really expensive to do this. I mean, we started out as a vertically integrated company. We had to. It was incredibly expensive to do that. And it's not easy to raise capital in this industry. So we've focused, we're doing well, but that's what keeps me up. It's like, there are so many opportunities. Pet CBD, you know, my staff, they just roll their eyes. But it's a great opportunity, right? So, but we're not doing that right now because you can only do so many
things. It's on the FDA's
things.
hit list too, so you have to be careful.
Can't believe that they would regulate that. That's just ridiculous.
Dan, as an investor, what's your biggest concern?
Well, I think,
Besides getting your money back.
He's not that worried about that.
well,
we got that covered.
I think as an investor, you got to be in for the long term, not the short term. And you have to have a view that, you know, you're in an industry that's going to go through some ups and downs. It doesn't necessarily mean that over the long term it won't go up. But, you know, within it, there are going to be cycles. And there's going to be, like the cycle we're in right now. So I think cautioning people not to try to hit grand slams and home runs right off the bat. Your batting average will be very low. You might have some home runs, but overall it might hurt you. I think there's money to be made in these cycles, but I think you got to be careful. What I've experienced with what we're experiencing now with sort of, you know, the valuations or sort of this capital crunch, that it takes some time for the industry to cycle through that. So the valuations don't immediately go down. It takes time. So I think being patient, thoughtful, and not getting too over your skis is going to be important as you navigate through sort of this growing industry. I think partnering with good people, finding ones that are well capitalized, because obviously the trades are not happening in cash, they're happening in stock, and there's consolidation happening all the time. So it is a bit of a, you know, going from one lily pad to the next, and just making sure that you're aware of that, and that's the game. You know, so your capital is not going to necessarily be liquid day one. It may take several years to get liquid. So making sure that you have a voice in whatever the new entity is, or having a way of getting liquidity over time so that you just don't end up, you know, because when you're having to go through multiple iterations, you know, you can easily get lost in the shuffle. But overall, I think that we've got great opportunities here. I think this sort of industry is going to be here for a long time. I think what we're seeing today is a result of this pent-up demand for consumers, pent-up demand for investors to get into the industry. So if you think about, I mean, Tilray is a great example. You know, ran up to this extreme high, and now it's run back down, and it will come back. And I think that, you know, if they weren't capitalized well, they would be in trouble. So I think you have to recognize that what's happening today is not necessarily an indication of what's going to happen tomorrow. It's what happened a year or two prior to this. So yeah, there's a lot of investors that got burned in this most recent round, but I wouldn't be so quick to just jump in and say, oh my God, all these things I looked at 6 months ago are now at, you know, 20 or 30 or 50% of the value. I think, you know, you got to kind of be patient and really be thoughtful. I don't think that the game's changed. I just think that, you know, where people were being a little more aggressive, they may have gotten, you know, kind of caught out there a bit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that things are changing with the consumer and what have you.
Let me ask Karen one last question, then we'll open it up to the audience. There's a spectrum of people in this audience who are, you know, experienced, they have their MSOs, all the way down to people who are just getting into the business. And where do you feel, for those people who are just getting into the business, what advice do you have with respect to the ability to get into the business now in Massachusetts, with all the applications that are in the pipelines taking forever to get through them, regardless of that 90-day statement? But you know, is it too late for somebody to enter into this space as a cultivator or as a retailer, in your opinion?
I don't think it's too late, but I think that you have to be very realistic about the amount of money it will take, the amount of time it will take, and the amount of expertise it will take. I've seen people who've done well in other industries and are very well capitalized, and they think they're going to come in and do well in this industry. It takes a lot of expertise to do this in Massachusetts. Maybe there's some other states that are not as regulated, but it is extremely regulated here, and it takes a lot of technical ability to do really any aspect of this business, from the politics. I mean, you're basically, when you're getting your approvals to do any sort of this business and located in any town, you're saying to the politicians, I want to bring weed into your town. You know, so you can think about in Massachusetts how well that's going to go over, right? So that will always be a challenge to get those local approvals, because it's a lot easier for politicians to say no than it is to say yes, right? So the politics are always going to be a challenge. the technical expertise to build out one of these facilities. To build out our cultivation facility, for instance, we have 186 cameras. And it's really technically difficult to grow in Massachusetts, to grow indoors. And what we found is that there really aren't a lot of good consultants to help you through any aspect of this process. We had to figure out almost everything by ourselves. So it's really a challenge. And so then you finally have a crop, and you've cultivated, and you've got your approvals. The testing requirements that you have to abide by in Massachusetts are the most stringent in the country. So organic potatoes, I've been told, would not pass the testing that we have to pass. So then there's that. Then if you're processing your products, you would not believe how difficult it is to make some of these products and have accurate dosing. You know, we had caramels that would melt and they would stick to the wax, and then we had chocolate where the oil of the marijuana would be on top of the chocolate, and everything is a nightmare. We had 2 cordon bleu chefs. Who knew? They're not trained in making candies. So I had to fly in some retired candy exec twice to teach them how to make candy bars, right? It's just everything is a lot more difficult than you think it will be. And I just didn't find that, at least for me, the consultants that I hired were very helpful at all. We figured it out pretty much by ourselves. Our topicals, we figured out how to make them by ourselves, our bath bombs, our tinctures, everything. And the business you start out with is different than the business that we have now. And I've read this over and over in Harvard Business School journal articles, and some of my advisors, they say, look, the people that you start out with, you might love them, but they're not necessarily the people that you will end up with as the company grows, right? Because not everyone can grow with the company. And that is also kind of heartbreaking sometimes and a challenge. So it's a difficult industry to do and to abide by the regulations and to get through the approval process. And then as you're growing, your company changes, and the people that you need for the company somewhat changes too. So, and then you wake up one morning and there's a vape pen ban. The only legal marijuana vape pen ban in the country happens to be in
Massachusetts.
Right? So you really have to just be resilient and pivot and just put one foot in front of the other every single day and keep going. Make certain you hire the right people. That is really one of the key things in any company. Any business is a team. And we're actually bringing our head of HR. We want to bring her into the C-suite. I don't know why more companies don't do that, because you really need great people, hiring great people, training great people, retaining great people. And you need to know how to fire without getting sued, right? And so HR is really important. And we acknowledge that in our company. And it's really made a huge difference, bringing the right people in and retaining them.
Well, I think that and we're going to talk about this at the last panel, the capital markets jaded a lot of people's perception of this industry that you could get rich overnight. And most of those stocks have come down 70, 80% in market value. So this is not a get-rich-quick industry. It's sophisticated. It's difficult. There's waters that you have to navigate that you don't see what's around the corner. And you are doing a terrific job with Dan in doing that, and I appreciate you being here. We do have time just for a couple quick questions. And yes?
My question's around branding, more specifically given the regulations in the market around marketing, advertising, merchandising, packaging, all those things. What is your strategy? What is your strategy to develop a brand that's recognizable? And then to Frank, what advice are you giving legally around branding and all those things to your clients?
So it starts out with having excellent quality products that are as good or better than your competitors, right? You can have a very pretty, fabulous, eye-catching package, but if the product inside is garbage, people are not going to buy it a second time. So you start out with great products, and that's what we did. And we're actually in the process of rebranding a lot of our products. And we have a great company. Dan has a lot of, and the people at FCP have a lot of expertise on that. So they actually help vet the company that we've chosen for our rebranding. We're in that process. We are very happy with the results so far. So it's having the right products. It's educating people when they come in on how to use those products. And the visuals are important. And we're also putting our products slowly on the shelves of our competitors. A lot of these products are really difficult to create consistently, and it takes a lot of money and expertise to build out the team and the machinery and everything necessary to create these products. So there are a number of businesses that are just going to be retail. We can provide products to them. There are businesses that want to do the full spectrum of products, but it's not that easy to make these products, and so we can also sell to them. And we see that as a future consistent and increasing revenue stream for us. But even with our current packaging, which is not where we want it to be, it's okay, but we still have a lot of demand, and there are a lot of other companies that are trying to buy our products wholesale. So there's a lot of limitations on, you can't do the usual type of advertising. There's some people pushing the envelope a little bit on that. But once you get people into your stores and they try the products, if it does what they want it to do, typically we have at least from the first time people come to us, we have at least an 80% return rate, which is quite good. There's going to be some people just going to check out the store and they might drive 1 or 2 hours. They're never coming back, no matter how great your products are. But typically, people who come and try our products, they like them. They like what it does. They like how they taste. They like how the topicals smell. They like how our products work. And so they do continue to buy them. And to me, that's a big part of how you build a business and how you build brand loyalty. You need great products that do what the people are buying them for.
Yeah, the short answer on the legal side.
Sorry, I wasn't short.
No, but on the legal side is, each state is different with their regs. And the regs are complicated with respect to how you can advertise, how you can brand, whether you can give out T-shirts and pens. It's literally down to that kind of minutia.
Which we can't, by the way.
Which you can't. It's crazy. And then if you're outside of the dispensaries that are regulated for cannabis and you're into CBD and hemp, then there's a whole different set of regulations. As I talked about this morning, the FDA, you can't make the medical claims. You're not supposed to be saying it cures arthritis or cancer, and they'll go after you for that, or they should be going after you for that. But in the cannabis space, you have to look at the regs of each state, and they do get very, very strict and particular. So, one more question?
Hi, yes. Hello. My question is for Karen, and first I just want to say, guys, thank you, because you are pioneers of the industry, which most people don't know, as far as the legwork you've put in for everybody else going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned a lot about, in talking about edibles, so I'm curious to know what you're doing to address bioavailability.
So actually, we have cracked that code and solved that problem. Our edibles, the onset typically starts about 20 minutes. There is some variability, but not a lot. They really work well, and they do what they're supposed to, and in the time frame that we teach people that they will have the onset, that they will have this peak, they will have this offset. The reason for edibles is that they last longer than inhaled forms. So inhaled forms works immediately. Within a minute or two, you have the effects. Edibles, half hour, maybe peak of about an hour. But for instance, we have products that are excellent for insomnia, better than Ambien, and they'll last throughout the night, right? You don't want to wake up after 3 or 4 hours, which is what could happen with an inhaled form. And they last for a long period of time. And so the different forms have different onset, different lengths of effects. And our staff are trained. We actually have a full-time training coordinator that does nothing but train our staff in all the areas of this business. They're trained to teach people how to use edibles, which was a big problem in other states. Our chocolate, for instance, our chocolates are so delicious, it's really hard not to eat the whole bar. But we teach people, have 1 square, it's 5 milligrams. Use that, wait 7 hours. You see how that goes. And And so education has been really important in all aspects of our business, and our staff are trained, well trained, to make certain that people don't leave our facility until they know how to use whatever it is that they've purchased.
And all these great products are available at the stores in Newton, Melrose, and Marlboro.
Yes, yes, we're open right now.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us today. As I said,
Thank you for inviting us, Frank.
This is the great example of coming together, connecting.
You made the marriage.
And collaborating.
Thank you for being the yunta.
I appreciate that, and it's a privilege to be a part of that. But I'm glad you could share your story with the audience today, and continued success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now be taking a 10-minute break.